They are all trapped. These are the world's most extreme women's prisons, and you're about to step inside. Tucked away on the dusty outskirts of Tehran, Iran, is a prison that makes every other facility on this list feel like a wellness retreat. This is Korchak. At first glance, it might look like an old warehouse or a forgotten poultry farm, and that's exactly what it used to be. But today, it's one of the most overcrowded and controversial women's prisons in the world. A place so infamous that even international organizations have raised alarms about what goes on inside. Korchak was never built to be a prison. It has no proper infrastructure for holding thousands of people, yet that's exactly what it's doing. The women here are packed into giant, shared halls where privacy is non-existent, and the heat can become unbearable. There's no air conditioning, and in summer the temperatures climb so high it feels like the inside of an oven. In winter it's the opposite, freezing and damp with no real insulation. Now picture that for a moment. Hundreds of women sleeping on the floor, no windows, no fresh air, and only one shared bathroom per block. A major issue here is how all types of prisoners are held together. That means non-violent offenders might end up living next to gang leaders or high-profile detainees. There are no real divisions, it's just one open space. That mix creates constant tension, and conflict can break out over something as small as a food tray. Speaking of food, it's mostly basic, with limited nutrition, and many inmates rely on their families to bring essentials like clean water, clothing, or medicine, if they're lucky enough to receive visits. One of the most talked about aspects of Korchak is how isolated the women feel. Family visits are rare, phone calls are limited, and there's little access to the outside world. Many women describe the place as a kind of forgotten land, a place where time moves differently, where the days blur together. Some say it's not the rules that are tough. It's the complete lack of structure that makes it so hard. You're in a building with hundreds of others, but still totally alone. Despite its harsh reputation, Korchak continues to operate with very little transparency. Journalists are rarely allowed in. Photos are scarce. This isn't some scene out of Orange is the New Black. Korchak is something else entirely. It's chaos under a tin roof, no clear lines, no real relief. Just a constant struggle to stay mentally stable in a place that seems designed to wear people down. If you walked past El Buen Pastor prison in Bogotá during its annual celebration, you might think you've stumbled into a community fair. Music blares, cameras flash, and inmates strut down a makeshift runway in full makeup and evening gowns. Yes, a real beauty pageant. But behind the stage lights and smiles lies a very different world. This women's prison holds over 1,000 inmates, packed into a crumbling facility built decades ago. The pageant is real, but it's only a short escape from a daily grind of overcrowded cells and relentless noise. Inside, the conditions are anything but glamorous. Cells meant for 4 often hold 8. There are no beds for everyone, so inmates rotate sleeping hours or rest directly on the floor. There's barely any room to walk, let alone breathe. Electricity goes out, water is rationed, and basic supplies, like toilet paper or feminine hygiene products, are often missing unless family members bring them. The beauty contest might look bizarre to outsiders, but for many of these women, it's the only moment in the year where they feel seen, where they're not just another number in a concrete block. What makes El Buen Pastor so unusual is the contrast. On one hand, there's structured religious programs, workshops, some education. On the other, there's instability, a lack of privacy, and the heavy pressure of trying to survive in a place that's bursting at the seams. It's not the worst prison in the world, but it might be one of the most surreal. The makeup fades, the cameras leave, and the women return to a reality that hasn't changed. The sparkle of the pageant is just a mask, one that covers a very rough day-to-day life. Now, let's travel from the noisy chaos of Bogotá to the quiet, tightly controlled environment of Luzira Women's Prison in Uganda. It doesn't look like a nightmare on the surface. There's greenery, organized routines, and a calm rhythm to daily life. But don't let appearances fool you. Luzira is known for its intense discipline and strict internal system, where every minute is accounted for and no movement goes unnoticed. Here, women wake early, clean their cells, and attend mandatory work programs. The prison runs like a small village, complete with gardens, classrooms, and sewing stations. But the real control comes from within. The women govern themselves through a hierarchy of inmate leaders, chosen by the prison to maintain order. It sounds democratic, but in practice, this peer policing system adds extra pressure. One wrong move can lead to being reported, isolated, or reassigned to less favorable duties. Luzira is often praised for trying to rehabilitate instead of just punish. It offers education, counseling, and even family visits in designated bonding rooms. But this structure comes with a cost. Freedom inside is extremely limited, and there's a sense of constant observation. Women are trained to monitor themselves and each other. If Korchak is ruled by chaos, Luzira is ruled by silence and structure. There are no loud beauty contests here, no wild outbursts. Just rows of uniforms, set schedules, and a system that teaches you how to behave, even if it means losing part of who you were before. You won't find dramatic headlines or viral videos coming out of Lard Yao Women's Prison. It's not loud, it's not theatrical. But that silence is exactly what makes it so intense. Officially named the Central Women's Correctional Institution, this facility sits quietly in the middle of Bangkok. From the outside it looks calm, almost boring. Inside it's a completely different story. Lard Yao is one of the most crowded women's prisons in Southeast Asia, housing thousands of inmates, many of them convicted for minor drug offenses. The cells here are tight. At night, women sleep in long rows, shoulder to shoulder on the floor with nothing but thin mats. The lights never fully go out. Privacy doesn't exist. Everything is done in groups, eating, sleeping, even using the bathroom. And the rules? They're enforced with military precision. You speak when spoken to. You sit when told. You move only when permitted. For some inmates, it's like being part of a silent drill team, with no escape and no applause. What makes Lard Yao so unique is how it blends punishment with performance. Every now and then the world catches a glimpse of the dancing inmates, choreographed routines practiced by prisoners for public display. It looks like rehabilitation. Maybe it is. But beneath the synchronized movements and smiling faces there's still a layer of control. Participation is rarely optional. If you follow the rules, you get privileges. If not, you don't. Life inside Lard Yao isn't brutal in the traditional sense. It's not loud or chaotic. It's the quiet pressure of having your every move scripted and your daily life shaped by an invisible clock ticking overhead. Welcome to the largest women's prison in the United States. Chowchilla, officially known as the Central California Women's Facility, isn't just big, it's massive. It stretches across acres of dry land, surrounded by barbed wire, towers, and walls that seem to trap more than just people. This place was built for security, not comfort, and it shows in every corner of the compound. From the moment you step through its gates, the weight of its size hits you. But what's heavier is the atmosphere inside. Chowchilla holds some of the most long-term and high-risk female inmates in the country. Many are here for decades, some for life. The days are long and they rarely change. Inmates follow strict routines, counts, mealtimes, lockdowns. There's education and work programs, but space is limited, and getting into the good ones can take months, even years. The cells are tight and shared, and many inmates spend up to 22 hours a day locked inside. Noise bounces off the concrete walls, making sleep difficult and peace almost impossible to find. Despite being in California, where innovation and reform get a lot of buzz, Chowchilla operates more like a cold machine. It runs efficiently, but not warmly. Mental health is a growing concern here, with long-term isolation and strict control taking a toll on many inmates. It's not chaos like in other parts of the world, it's monotony that drains you. The prison is a fortress not because of its defenses but because of its emotional weight. It doesn't scream, it just quietly presses down on anyone who enters day after day. For many women here, the toughest part isn't what happened before they arrived, it's how slow the days pass once they're inside. On the surface, Lo Wu Correctional Institution looks almost futuristic. Surrounded by tall fences and clean landscaping near Hong Kong's northern border, it could pass for a tech campus or modern office complex. But beyond those sleek walls lies one of the most tightly controlled women's prisons in East Asia. Lo Wu doesn't use chains or overcrowded cells to enforce discipline. It uses silence, routine, and invisible pressure. This is Hong Kong's largest women's prison, housing a mix of short-term and long-term inmates, including those convicted of smuggling, fraud, and more recently, political offenses. It's a place where everything runs like clockwork. Inmates wear identical uniforms, follow a rigid daily schedule, and move only when instructed. Conversations are limited, and stepping out of line even slightly can result in lost privileges or time in solitary. The discipline here is quiet, cold, and consistent. What sets Lo Wu apart is its focus on structure over fear. Inmates participate in vocational training, laundry, printing, and even hairdressing, and can earn certificates that help with post-release work. There's a sense of opportunity, But it comes with conditions. Everything is monitored. Every phone call is supervised. Visitors must follow strict rules. Even emotional expression is kept in check. While it doesn't make headlines for physical abuse or overcrowding, Lowu earns its reputation through psychological control. It's not brutal in a visible way. It's controlled to the point where daily life feels almost sterile, clean, quiet, and stripped of individuality. For many inmates, the toughest part isn't the environment. It's becoming just another cog in a perfectly functioning system. In the heart of Cochabamba, Bolivia, there's a prison that doesn't just house women, it houses entire families. San Sebastian Women's Prison is one of the few places in the world where children live behind bars alongside their mothers. From the outside, it's a worn-down building surrounded by concrete walls. But inside, it's something else entirely, a chaotic mix of motherhood, confinement, and survival. Here, toddlers play near cell doors, strollers are parked next to bunks, and lullabies echo off prison walls. This setup wasn't planned with care. It happened out of necessity. Bolivian law allows children under a certain age to stay with their mothers in prison if there's no one else to care for them. So, what should be a correctional facility doubles as a makeshift daycare. There are no separate spaces for children, no safety zones, and certainly no proper healthcare services for growing kids. The same bathrooms, the same food lines, the same crowded conditions, kids go through it all with their moms. The cells are tight, and personal space doesn't exist. Many women sleep on blankets laid out on the floor. There are no beds for everyone. Resources are so limited that inmates rely heavily on family visits for essentials like diapers, soap, or clean clothes. And when those visits stop, you go without. There are programs aimed at helping the women, including basic workshops or short-term jobs, but access depends on space and approval. The prison isn't built for comfort or for kids, but both exist here anyway. San Sebastian may not have conflicts of other prisons, but its uniqueness lies in what you see every day. A baby taking its first steps on prison tile. A mother trying to stay strong in a place where crying is constant and sleep is rare. It's not the cruelty of punishment that makes this prison stand out. It's the strange, uncomfortable blur between parenting and confinement, a childhood spent behind a locked gate. Deep in the outskirts of Yangon, surrounded by layers of barbed wire and watchtowers, stands one of Asia's most secretive and feared prisons, Insign. This isn't a name you hear often in everyday conversation, but inside Myanmar, it carries weight. Insign Prison is infamous across the region, and the women's wing, tucked away within the larger compound, is especially unsettling. It's not the size or the noise that gets you, it's the silence, the uncertainty, and the sense that you're completely cut off from the rest of the world. The women held here range from those accused of political activity to others sentenced for small-time offenses. But once you're in, the categories blur. Everyone is treated with the same distant coldness. The cells are small, the air is thick, and days pass with minimal movement or interaction. There's little natural light, and the tropical humidity makes even sitting still feel exhausting. Communication with the outside world is rare. Visitors are limited, letters often vanish, and phone calls? Almost unheard of. The control here isn't just physical, it's psychological. Women often spend hours in locked rooms with nothing but their thoughts. There are few programs, almost no rehabilitation opportunities, and very little information on when or how things will change. Even release dates can shift without warning. Rumors travel faster than facts, and that's what makes Insign feel like a pressure cooker with no release valve. It's not a place that tries to look fair or modern. Unlike high-tech prisons in other countries, Insign hasn't changed much in decades. The walls are old, the routines are rigid, and the fear hangs in the air. This prison isn't built for progress, it's built to disappear people into the system. For the women inside, every day feels like a test of endurance. Not just physically, but emotionally. Insign is less about bars and chains and more about the quiet erosion of time. You've seen how harsh women's prisons can be, but what if some women behind bars lived with comfort, purpose, even beauty? Let's check out these prisons. Just outside of Brisbane lies a women's prison that looks, and feels, very different from the ones we've seen so far. The Brisbane Women's Correctional Centre isn't built like a fortress, and it doesn't function like one either. Instead of rows of tiny cells and echoing hallways, the focus here is on rehabilitation through stability, structure, and support. That doesn't mean it's soft, it's still a secure facility, but the way it handles life on the inside sets it apart. At this facility, women are housed in units that resemble shared homes. They cook together, clean together, and are expected to take part in their own upkeep. Each unit holds about 10 women, and includes a communal kitchen and living area. There's no mistaking that you're still in prison, but the environment encourages cooperation rather than tension. That alone makes a huge difference in how women adjust to life inside. One of the most unique features of Brisbane Women's Correctional Center is its focus on trauma-informed care. Many of the inmates here come from difficult backgrounds, and staff are trained to understand the psychological weight that often comes with that. Rather than isolate women or punish them harshly for acting out, the prison puts time into communication, mental health support, and personalized care plans. There's a health clinic on site, parenting programs for mothers, and cultural spaces for Indigenous inmates, recognizing that one-size-fits-all doesn't work when it comes to rehabilitation. Of course, it's still prison. Movement is restricted, rules are enforced, and not everyone has the same experience. But the goal here isn't just control, it's to prepare these women for life after release. From vocational programs like hospitality training and construction workshops, to wellness activities like yoga and self-development classes, this facility invests in growth. Brisbane Women's Correctional Center doesn't promise comfort, it offers structure. And in a system that's often cold and rigid, that approach stands out. On the southern edge of Auckland, New Zealand, there's a prison that redefines what it means to do time. The Auckland Region Women's Corrections Facility isn't built on fear or punishment, it's built around identity, healing, and cultural connection. This is New Zealand's largest women-only prison, and while it's fully secure and professionally run, it's also one of the few places where women behind bars are encouraged to reconnect with their roots, rather than just serve out their sentence. One of the most remarkable aspects of this facility is its focus on Maori culture. With a significant number of Maori women in custody, the prison incorporates language, tradition, and community-based values directly into daily life. Inmates can take part in kapa haka, learn traditional crafts, and even perform ceremonies in specially designed cultural spaces. This approach isn't just symbolic, it's designed to rebuild identity, restore pride, and create a sense of belonging that many women lost long before they arrived. The prison also offers dedicated whanau units, family-focused areas that allow mothers to spend meaningful time with their children in a safe, respectful environment. Unlike the bleak, overcrowded cell blocks in other parts of the world, these spaces feel more like homes. There's color, light, and furniture that doesn't scream institution. It's not about luxury, it's about dignity. Inmates here have access to education, job training, and counseling. Some train in trades like horticulture or culinary arts. Others study toward qualifications through correspondence programs. But perhaps the most powerful element is the focus on rehabilitation through connection, both to others and to oneself. Officers are trained to support, not just supervise, and that shift in mindset ripples through the entire environment. Auckland Region Women's Corrections Facility doesn't claim to be perfect. There are still challenges, but it stands as proof that when women are treated as people first, not just prisoners, the outcomes can be very different. It's not leniency, it's a smarter kind of justice. Tucked away in the quiet countryside of North Yorkshire, HMP Askham Grange might be one of the most surprising women's prisons in the UK. There are no towering walls or menacing guard towers here. Instead, this open prison feels more like a peaceful residential campus than a correctional facility. And yes, one of its standout features is a fully functioning beauty salon, open to the public and staffed by inmates in training. This isn't just for show, the salon is part of a broader strategy at Askham Grange, helping women rebuild confidence, gain real-world skills, and feel a sense of normal life. Inmates can earn vocational qualifications in hairdressing and beauty therapy, giving them a valuable edge for employment once they're released. Locals from the surrounding area book appointments and interact with the women face-to-face, breaking down stereotypes and creating a rare sense of community between the inside and the outside. But it's not all about haircuts and manicures. The prison also includes a cafe that's open to the public, allowing inmates to train in hospitality and customer service. There are mother and baby units designed to support women caring for young children. The goal here is to make prison time productive rather than punitive. Inmates are expected to take responsibility for their routines, participate in work or study programs, and prepare for a life beyond the gate. The environment is clean, structured, and respectful. There are gardens, personal development workshops, and group therapy sessions. The women live in shared accommodations rather than isolated cells, with access to kitchen spaces where they cook their own meals. It's a long way from the harsh concrete blocks seen in traditional prisons. Askham Grange operates on the belief that trust, dignity, and preparation are more powerful than punishment alone. For many viewers, this kind of prison may sound too soft, but the results speak volumes. Low reoffending rates, higher employment rates post-release, and a stronger sense of personal accountability. At Ascom Grange, rehabilitation isn't just a buzzword, it's part of the daily routine. To close our journey, we arrive in Sweden, at Hinseberg, the country's largest women-only prison. And if you're expecting rows of cold cells and harsh routines, think again. Hinseberg is something entirely different. This is a place where the focus isn't just on time served, but on what happens after. Here, the system is built around the idea that if you want people to change, you have to give them the tools to do it. The environment is calm, structured, and surprisingly open. Women live in small shared apartments, not barred cells. They wear their own clothes, manage their own schedules, and cook their own meals. There's trust here, earned and reinforced daily. Inmates take part in education, group therapy, and long-term skill building. Many even study for university degrees or learn trades like sewing, cooking, and computer work. Hinseberg doesn't hide the fact that it's a prison, but it refuses to define the women by their worst mistakes. The focus is on growth, reflection, and giving people a real shot at a different life. Guards are called correctional officers, but act more like counselors or mentors. It's not about leniency, it's about building people up so they don't return. In a world filled with harsh institutions and broken systems, Hinseberg is a rare example of what happens when dignity, responsibility, and structure are combined. It's not a soft option, it's just smart. And maybe, just maybe, it's the future. Halden Prison in Norway is unlike any other maximum security facility. It is built on the idea that treating inmates with dignity leads to real rehabilitation. Instead of small cells with cold metal beds, prisoners live in private rooms with soft mattresses, flat-screen TVs, and ensuite bathrooms. The prison is designed to feel open and welcoming, with bright hallways, large windows, and modern furniture. There are no towering fences covered in razor wire, just green forests surrounding the facility. Guards don't carry weapons and are trained to interact with inmates as mentors rather than enforcers. Prisoners have access to a fully equipped gym, a music studio where they can record songs, and even a kitchen where they can cook their own meals. There are workshops for woodworking, painting, and mechanical repairs, helping inmates develop job skills. The focus is on creating a structured, normal life so that prisoners can transition smoothly back into society. Norway's approach is controversial. Some critics argue that Halden is too comfortable, that it feels more like a college dorm than a prison. However, the results speak for themselves. Norway has one of the lowest recidivism rates in the world. Most former inmates don't return to crime, which means fewer victims, safer communities, and lower costs for the justice system. For Norway, rehabilitation is not about being soft on criminals, it's about preventing future crimes. Prisons are often seen as places where inmates waste years behind bars, waiting for their release. But in New Zealand, Otago Corrections Facility takes a different approach. This prison isn't just about confinement, it's a training ground for a second chance. Inmates spend their time learning valuable skills, from carpentry and engineering to dairy farming. Instead of sitting idle in cells, they are welding, repairing machinery, or gaining construction certifications that can land them jobs after release. The prison operates more like a giant trade school, with workshops filled with tools and experienced instructors guiding prisoners toward a new future. The environment is strict, but there's a clear purpose. Prisoners must follow routines, show discipline, and prove they can handle responsibility. Those who complete training programs often find it easier to reintegrate into society, reducing their chances of ending up back behind bars. Critics argue that inmates are being given too many opportunities, but the results speak for themselves. New Zealand's focus on skill development inside prisons has led to lower reoffending rates. Yet even here, the facility is still locked, structured, and heavily monitored. But what if inmates were trusted with even more freedom? That's exactly what happens in Finland. A prison with no fences, no bars, and no armed guards might sound like a security nightmare, but in Finland, it's part of a well-tested system. Open prisons give inmates a surprising level of freedom, allowing them to live in dormitory-style housing, work regular jobs, and even leave during the day. These aren't hardened criminals locked away from society. They are offenders serving the last part of their sentence, gradually adjusting to the outside world before full release. The logic is simple. If prisoners learn to function in a structured, real-world environment before they are freed, they are far less likely to reoffend. Instead of spending years in isolation, they work, earn wages, and contribute to society while still serving their sentences. The surprising part? Escape attempts are rare. Inmates know that staying means they will be free much sooner than if they violate the rules. Finland's open prison system has gained international attention for its effectiveness, proving that sometimes trust can be more powerful than strict control. But what happens when a prison takes things even further and fully integrates education into its rehabilitation model? In Scotland, one facility is putting that theory to the test. In most prisons, inmates count the days until their release, passing the time with little direction. HMP Addywell in Scotland flips that idea on its head. Here, prison isn't just about serving a sentence. It's about learning, growth, and preparation for the future. The facility is designed as a learning prison, where every inmate follows a structured educational plan. From the moment they arrive, they are assessed and placed into courses that fit their skills and interests. Some take academic classes to improve literacy and numeracy, while others train in vocational skills like plumbing, electrical work, and mechanics. This isn't a standard classroom setting. Instead of traditional punishment, the focus is on guiding inmates toward self-improvement. Prisoners work toward certifications that make them employable upon release, giving them a real alternative to crime. The environment is strict, but constructive. Staff act as mentors, encouraging inmates to take responsibility for their actions and plan for a better future. Critics argue that it's too soft, and that prisons should focus on punishment rather than rehabilitation. But statistics suggest otherwise. Prisons that prioritize education tend to see lower reoffending rates. While HMP Addywell operates with purpose, it still offers structure and control. In some places, however, the issue isn't how to help prisoners, it's simply how to make space for them. Step inside Quezon City Jail and it quickly becomes clear, there is no space. Originally built for 800 inmates, the facility now holds over 4,000, with prisoners crammed into cells meant for a fraction of that number. There aren't enough beds, so many inmates sleep on the floor, on staircases, or even standing up, packed together so tightly that movement is difficult. The suffocating heat and lack of ventilation make conditions unbearable, and disease spreads rapidly. Food is limited and medical care is scarce, creating an environment where survival becomes the top priority. The problem isn't just the number of prisoners, it's the legal system. Many inmates haven't even been convicted of a crime. They are waiting for trials that take months, sometimes years, due to backlogs in the courts. With no space to separate violent offenders from those accused of minor crimes, tensions run high. Yet, despite the harsh conditions, inmates find ways to cope. Some take part in religious services, others form small businesses inside the jail, selling food or cigarettes. Authorities have tried to ease overcrowding by transferring prisoners to other facilities, but the issue remains. As cities grow and crime rates fluctuate, jails like this struggle to keep up. In some countries, the focus is on rehabilitation. In others, it's simply about managing chaos. Not all prisoners live under harsh conditions. In Indonesia, money can buy freedom, even behind bars. In the country's so-called VIP prisons, wealthy inmates enjoy privileges that ordinary prisoners can only dream of. Instead of cramped, overcrowded cells, those who can afford it get private rooms with air conditioning, televisions, and comfortable beds. Some even have access to personal chefs, cell phones, and, in extreme cases, illegal substances, smuggled in with the help of corrupt guards. While ordinary inmates live in overcrowded conditions with minimal food, wealthier prisoners can pay for better meals, extra visits, and even special treatment from prison staff. The existence of VIP jails became widely known after high-profile corruption cases exposed the luxury available to Indonesia's richest inmates. Business executives, corrupt politicians, and drug lords often find themselves in these prisons, but their lives inside are nothing like those of regular inmates. Investigations have revealed cells turned into luxury suites complete with sofas, refrigerators, and even karaoke machines. Authorities have attempted to crack down on the practice, but corruption runs deep, and money continues to buy privilege. For those who can afford it, prison is more of an inconvenience than a punishment. But in Bolivia, one prison operates under a completely different system, where inmates run the facility themselves. At first glance, San Pedro Prison in Bolivia looks like any other correctional facility. But step inside, and it becomes clear that this is no ordinary prison. There are no guards patrolling the halls, no strict schedules enforced by authorities. Instead, the inmates govern themselves, running the prison like a small town. Within its walls there are restaurants, barbershops, and even small businesses where prisoners earn money to survive. Housing isn't assigned, it's bought. Wealthier inmates can afford larger, more comfortable cells, while those with no money sleep on the floor in overcrowded areas. Families of inmates often live inside with them, creating a strange mix of normal life and incarceration. Children play in courtyards, wives cook meals, and some prisoners even leave during the day for work, returning at night to serve their sentences. This self-governed system has existed for decades, despite being highly unregulated. While it gives inmates a sense of independence, it also leads to lawlessness. Some areas are controlled by powerful prisoners who enforce their own rules, and violence can break out over disputes. Authorities occasionally attempt to regain control, but San Pedro remains a unique case, a prison where the inmates are in charge. It's a place that challenges everything people expect from a correctional facility, proving that in some parts of the world, prison can be an entirely different experience. In a world where most prisons are massive, high-security complexes, Sark Prison in Guernsey is the complete opposite. With just 2 tiny cells, it holds the title of the smallest operational jail in the world. This quaint stone building, originally built in the 1850s, is located on the tiny island of Sark, which has no cars, no streetlights, and a population of only a few hundred people. Unlike other prisons filled with long-term inmates, most prisoners in Sark only stay for a few hours or overnight before being released or transferred to a larger facility. Despite its small size, Sark Prison is still in use. It mainly holds people for minor offenses such as public intoxication or disturbing the peace. There are no high fences, no armed guards, and certainly no maximum security cells. Instead, the island relies on community discipline, and serious crimes are so rare that long-term incarceration is almost unheard of. While it may not be an intimidating place, it is still a functioning prison, a reminder that even in one of the most peaceful places in the world, laws must be upheld. But while Sark's prison is about as basic as it gets, some facilities take a completely different approach. Most prisons are built around control. Strict schedules, constant surveillance, and minimal personal freedom define life behind bars. Norgerhaven Prison in the Netherlands, however, challenges that model by giving inmates more responsibility over their daily lives. Here, prisoners have keys to their own rooms, cook their own meals, and are expected to take care of themselves, much like they would on the outside. The goal is to prepare inmates for reintegration into society by giving them responsibilities rather than forcing them into complete isolation. Norgerhaven's approach isn't about being soft on crime. It's based on the idea that when prisoners have a sense of normalcy and independence, they are far less likely to reoffend. The facility is designed to mimic the real world, with work programs, personal development courses, and an emphasis on trust. There are still rules, but inmates have far more freedom than in most traditional prisons. The results have been impressive: lower recidivism rates and a better transition back into society. In a world where many prisons focus on punishment, Norgerhaven is proving that responsibility and rehabilitation might be the key to reducing crime in the long run. Prisons are often overcrowded, but few compare to the sheer scale of Silivri Prison in Turkey. As the largest prison in the world, this massive complex can hold over 22,000 inmates and continues to expand. Located just outside Istanbul, Silivri isn't just a prison, it's a self-contained city of confinement, with multiple high-security buildings, courtrooms, medical facilities, and even a hospital inside its walls. The facility was originally built to house dangerous criminals, but in recent years, it has become infamous for holding political prisoners, journalists, and activists. Life inside Silivri is tough. The prison is heavily guarded, with constant surveillance, armed towers, and strict control over inmate movements. Cells are often overcrowded and prisoners have limited access to outdoor space. Reports from former inmates describe long periods of isolation, restricted contact with family, and limited access to legal representation. Despite its size, the prison has faced criticism for its harsh conditions and human rights concerns. Critics argue that it has become a symbol of mass incarceration, where thousands of people are held without fair trials. For some, Silivri represents security and control. For others, it is a place where justice is often questioned. While its scale is unmatched, its purpose remains controversial. As prison populations continue to rise worldwide, facilities like Silivri highlight the growing debate between security and human rights, raising the question, how big is too big when it comes to incarceration? Switzerland is often associated with efficiency and order, but Champdalen Prison tells a different story. Located in Geneva, this facility became notorious for extreme overcrowding, turning what was once a modern prison into a place of chaos. Originally built to house around 270 inmates, the prison's population at one point soared past 900, leading to packed cells, lack of hygiene, and rising tensions among prisoners. Detainees were crammed into tiny spaces, forced to sleep on floors, and given minimal access to fresh air. The situation became so dire that human rights organizations called it one of the worst cases of prison overcrowding in Europe. Authorities knew they had to act. In response, Switzerland launched an extensive modernization effort to improve conditions. New wings were constructed, increasing capacity while reducing the pressure on existing facilities. The government also introduced more rehabilitation programs, including education and vocational training, to help inmates reintegrate into society rather than cycle back into prison. The focus shifted from simply detaining offenders to giving them a chance to build a future after release. While overcrowding has improved, challenges remain. Champdalen is still home to a high number of pretrial detainees, meaning many inmates haven't even been convicted yet. Critics argue that Switzerland's strict immigration policies contribute to the issue, as many detainees are foreign nationals awaiting deportation. But for now, the prison stands as an example of how even the most overburdened facilities can evolve. The question is, can modernization truly fix overcrowding, or is it just a temporary solution to a growing global problem? A prison without high walls, armed guards, or barbed wire might sound like a security risk, but in Norway, it's a model for rehabilitation. Bastøy Prison, often called the world's most humane prison, is located on a scenic island in the Oslofjord. Here, inmates don't live in cramped cells but in small wooden cottages, sharing communal spaces and preparing their own meals. There are no uniform jumpsuits, no overcrowded dormitories, and no harsh punishments. Instead, prisoners work on farms, tend to animals, and fish in the surrounding waters, all while serving their sentences. Bastøy isn't about punishment. It's about rebuilding lives. The focus is on responsibility, trust, and rehabilitation. Inmates have jobs, earn wages, and attend therapy sessions to help them reintegrate into society. The prison runs almost entirely on renewable energy, making it one of the most eco-friendly correctional facilities in the world. This isn't a place for violent criminals, but for those nearing the end of their sentences, preparing to return to the real world. Critics say Bastøy is too lenient, that it looks more like a summer camp than a prison. But Norway's approach is working. The country has one of the lowest recidivism rates in the world, proving that humane treatment can be more effective than harsh punishment. Bastøy challenges everything people assume about incarceration. Can freedom, responsibility, and trust create better citizens? Norway seems to think so, and the results speak for themselves. Most prisons focus on strict routines, heavy surveillance, and harsh discipline to keep order. But in the Cebu Provincial Detention and Rehabilitation Center, or CPDRC in the Philippines, discipline takes a completely unexpected form: choreographed mass dance performances. This high-security prison became famous when a video of its inmates performing Michael Jackson's Thriller went viral. Rows of orange-uniformed prisoners moved in perfect sync, transforming the prison yard into a massive dance floor. But this wasn't just for entertainment. Dance was being used as a tool for discipline, mental health, and rehabilitation. The idea behind CPDRC's program was simple: keep inmates active, engaged, and focused on something positive. Instead of wasting away in their cells, prisoners spend hours practicing routines, working together to perfect each movement. The performances help reduce violence, relieve stress, and build a sense of unity among inmates. Many of them, locked up for years in an overcrowded facility, say the dance program gives them something to look forward to. It also changes how the public sees them, not just as criminals, but as people trying to improve themselves. However, not everyone supports this approach. Some argue that the performances are a spectacle rather than real rehabilitation, and critics question whether the program truly helps inmates reintegrate into society. Still, CPDRC stands as one of the most unique prison systems in the world, proving that discipline doesn't always come in the form of punishment. Sometimes it comes with music, movement, and a little bit of rhythm. Few prisons have a history as long and dark as HM Prison Shepton Mallet in the UK. Originally built in 1610, this facility stood for over 400 years, making it the oldest operating prison in the world, until its closure in 2013. Within its thick stone walls, countless prisoners lived, suffered, and died. Some were executed by hanging in the courtyard, while others faced brutal conditions that belonged to a different era. Over the centuries, the prison held highwaymen, murderers, war criminals, and even spies, each generation adding to its grim legacy. During World War II, the prison took on a different role. It became the execution site for American soldiers convicted of serious crimes while stationed in Britain. The U.S. military took control of the facility, turning it into a place of wartime justice. The echoes of its past still linger, and many believe that Shepton Mallet is one of the most haunted prisons in Britain. Guards and visitors have reported eerie sounds, whispers in empty corridors, and sudden drops in temperature, fueling ghost stories that refuse to die. By the time it finally closed its doors in 2013, Shepton Mallet had become obsolete, replaced by modern facilities with better security and improved conditions. Yet, its history remains. Today it serves as a tourist attraction, offering visitors a glimpse into centuries of incarceration. Its cells, once filled with the condemned, now stand empty, but the stories of those who lived and died within its walls will never truly fade. A prison so secure, so isolated, that escape is not even a consideration. ADX Florence, the United States' only federal supermax facility, was built for one reason: to keep the worst of the worst locked away permanently. The inmates here aren't just criminals, they are some of the most dangerous individuals in modern history. Drug lords, terrorists, serial killers, many of them serving multiple life sentences with no chance of release. Everything about ADX Florence is designed to break a person down. Inmates spend 23 hours a day inside tiny concrete cells, where even the bed, desk, and stool are molded from the same gray slab. Windows are just a small slit, positioned so they can't see anything but the sky. When they do leave their cells, it's only for an hour, alone, in an outdoor cage. Conversations are rare. Most prisoners don't even know their neighbors. The silence is deafening. Security is unmatched. Motion detectors, surveillance cameras, steel doors that open only with electronic controls. Every movement is monitored. There is no physical contact with other inmates, no communal dining areas, no chance to mix with the general population. Some prisoners have spent years, even decades, in total isolation. Even guards never get too close. Meals slide through a slot. Exercise happens in a cage just slightly larger than their cell. ADX Florence is sometimes called the clean version of hell. There's no physical abuse from guards, no chaotic prison riots. The suffering here is psychological. It's a slow, relentless routine that strips away any sense of humanity. Some inmates lose their minds, others simply give up. For many, it's not a prison, it's a place where time no longer exists, where days and nights blend into one endless stretch of emptiness. There are prisons that punish, and then there are places where survival itself is a punishment. Gitarama Prison is one of the most overcrowded and brutal detention centers in the world. Designed for just a few hundred inmates, it now holds thousands. There are no real cells, just an endless sea of people packed into open spaces, with barely enough room to stand. Sleeping is a privilege. Many inmates take turns lying down on the bare, filthy floor, while others remain on their feet for hours, shifting just to keep their blood flowing. The conditions are beyond inhumane. There is no clean water, no sanitation, and barely any medical care. Food is scarce, and what little there is often goes to the strongest, leaving the weak to waste away. Disease spreads faster than the guards can control. Violence is constant, not because of gangs or criminal organizations, but because when resources are this limited, every scrap of food and every inch of space becomes something to fight for. No rehabilitation, no real justice, just a daily struggle to stay alive. But if Gitarama is a prison where survival depends on brute strength, there are others where the threat comes from those in charge. Some prisons have their own unspoken rulers, not the guards, but the inmates themselves. And in Mexico's El Hongo, the ones pulling the strings aren't just dangerous, they're untouchable. Not every prison is controlled by the guards. In some places, the real power lies elsewhere. El Hongo is one of Mexico's most high-security prisons, but even thick walls and armed patrols don't always keep danger out. This facility houses some of the country's most dangerous cartel members, and behind bars, they don't just serve time, they continue running their operations. Unlike the chaos of many overcrowded Mexican prisons, El Hongo is strict, tightly monitored, and structured. Cells are locked down, movement is controlled, and gang factions are separated. But even with the highest security measures, influence finds a way through. Cartel bosses have a reach that extends far beyond the prison walls. Orders still get passed, deals still get made, and outside, the violence continues. Inside, there are other ways to gain power. bribery, intimidation, alliances made in the shadows. Life in El Hongo is a game of control, one where the wrong move can cost everything. It's not about brawling in the yard or riots in the cell blocks. It's about knowing who really holds the power and making sure you're not on the wrong side of it. But while El Hongo's inmates may have power, in some prisons, they have nothing. Not freedom, not control, not even the right to lift their heads. In Russia's Black Dolphin, every single second is accounted for, and the only way to survive is complete submission. There is no chaos here, no riots, no disorder, no fights between inmates. Black Dolphin Prison doesn't allow them the chance. This is where Russia locks away its most violent criminals, serial killers, terrorists, men whose crimes were so severe that they will never leave. Once inside, there is no future. Just an endless routine of control, isolation, and absolute submission. Every movement is monitored. Inmates are not allowed to relax, not even for a second. When they move, they are bent forward, blindfolded, escorted by guards who hold them in a painful stress position. They don't walk freely, ever. Cells are double-gated, windows are placed too high to see out, and prisoners are constantly watched. They eat, sleep, and exist in a locked-down cycle where time barely seems to move. Conversations are rare, hope is non-existent, but unlike prisons where violence is part of survival, here, it has been removed entirely. There is no power struggle, no gangs controlling the blocks, no negotiations. The prison itself is the only authority. The inmates don't ask questions because they already know the answer. Here, the only thing they can do is follow orders and exist within the walls of the fortress that will never let them go. Some prisons break people slowly, others do it instantly. Diyarbakir prison has a reputation that lingers like a shadow over Turkey's history. Built as a military facility before being turned into a maximum security prison, it quickly became infamous for the brutal conditions inside. This is not just a place where prisoners serve time, it is where they are crushed under the weight of fear, isolation, and extreme control. Overcrowding, malnutrition, and violent punishment became the norm. Political prisoners, dissidents, and ordinary criminals were all locked inside the same walls, but no one was treated humanely. Cells were suffocating, packed beyond capacity, and sanitary conditions were practically non-existent. Inmates were given barely enough food to survive, and medical care was a distant dream. The worst part wasn't even the physical suffering. It was the psychological warfare. Some prisoners spent years without ever knowing if they'd see the outside world again. Control was absolute, but it came at a cost. Protests broke out, riots erupted, and the violence became impossible to contain. Diyarbakir isn't as notorious as it once was, but the scars it left behind still remain. And as history has shown, when control breaks down in the world's toughest prisons, the consequences can be deadly. Nowhere proves that more than Karandiru, the site of one of the bloodiest prison massacres ever recorded. When a prison reaches its breaking point, the outcome is never clean. Karandiru was once the largest prison in Latin America, housing thousands of inmates in a system stretched far beyond its limits. With overcrowding, gang conflicts, and a near-total lack of resources, violence was inevitable. Then came the day when it spiraled out of control. In 1992, a riot erupted inside Karandiru, one of many in its history. But this time, it didn't end with just fights between inmates. Police stormed the prison in an attempt to restore order, and within hours, the massacre began. By the time the shooting stopped, 111 inmates lay dead. Many were unarmed, some had surrendered, others were executed in their cells. It was a level of force so brutal that even hardened criminals were left in shock. Karandiru was shut down years later, but its legacy still haunts Brazil's prison system. The country's facilities remain overcrowded and violent, with gang control running rampant. The bloodshed of 1992 was supposed to be a warning, but the cycle of chaos continues. In some prisons, the violence comes from within. In others, it's built into the system itself. In Thailand's Bang Kwang prison, prisoners don't just fear other inmates. They fear the slow, crushing weight of the system designed to keep them shackled, both physically and mentally. A prison with an innocent-sounding nickname, but there's nothing luxurious about it. Bang Kwang, better known as the Bangkok Hilton, is one of the most unforgiving places in Thailand's justice system. Once inside, the first thing new inmates experience isn't the cells or the guards. It's the heavy metal shackles locked onto their ankles. Some wear them for months, others wear them for years. The prison was originally built to hold a few thousand inmates, but overcrowding has turned it into a nightmare. Prisoners are packed into tight spaces, forced to sleep on the floor in rooms so crowded that movement is nearly impossible. The food is barely edible, often nothing more than rice mixed with a watery broth. Medical care is minimal and diseases spread quickly. Death row inmates spend their final days in even harsher conditions, knowing that their execution could come at any moment. Bang Kwang is known for breaking men. Some adapt, some fade away, and some simply vanish into the system. But it's not the worst prison in the world for political prisoners. That title belongs to a place where isolation is an art, where silence is a weapon, and where many enter but few ever leave. Evin Prison, Iran's most notorious detention center, is a place where fear itself becomes part of the sentence. Prisons are meant to be places of punishment, but in some, the crime barely matters. Evin Prison is where Iran locks away its political prisoners, journalists, activists, and anyone who dares to challenge the system. Officially, it's just another prison. In reality, it's a machine designed to silence dissent. The facility is divided into separate wings, with regular criminals housed alongside those convicted of political crimes. But the worst treatment is reserved for those considered enemies of the state. Isolation cells, endless interrogations, and restricted contact with the outside world are all part of daily life. Family visits are rare, letters heavily censored. For some inmates, years pass without a glimpse of the outside world. Evin is as much a psychological prison as a physical one. Here, there are no loud riots or chaotic prison yards, just silence, uncertainty, and the constant reminder that once you're inside, getting out is never guaranteed. But as secretive as Evin is, it's nothing compared to the prison that defines secrecy itself. Camp 22 in North Korea is a place so hidden that, for years, the world didn't even know it existed. There are prisons, and then there are places designed to erase people completely. Camp 22 is not just a prison, it's a world unto itself. Hidden deep in the mountains, cut off from civilization, it's a forced labor camp where inmates don't serve time. They disappear. The prisoners here aren't just criminals. They are political detainees, accused of crimes against the North Korean government. Some are sent here for speaking against the regime. Others arrive simply because of their family ties, and once inside, escape is impossible. Guarded by high fences, electric barriers, and armed patrols, the camp is built to ensure that no one ever leaves. Few images of Camp 22 exist. Satellite photos show vast compounds, fields where prisoners work from dawn to dusk, and rows of buildings with no visible exits. The outside world knows little about what happens inside, but those who have escaped describe a place where prisoners are stripped of all identity, where forced labor is endless, and where hope is nothing more than a distant memory. But not all prisons rely on brutality alone. Some control their inmates through a different kind of discipline, a system where obedience is absolute, and silence is the only sound allowed. There are no riots here, no chaos, no gangs, no fights in the yard. Fuchu Prison doesn't need them. Japan's largest maximum security prison operates under a system of discipline so strict that even the smallest infraction is met with immediate consequences. Inmates don't talk, they don't move unless instructed. Every step, every action is controlled. The cells are small, but that's not what makes the prison unbearable. It's the silence. Inmates are forbidden from speaking without permission. They eat in silence, work in silence, live in silence. Even letters from family are censored, removing anything that could disrupt the absolute order inside. Prisoners march in lines, move in perfect synchronization, and follow rules down to the smallest detail. It may not have the violence of other notorious prisons, but that doesn't make it any easier. Fuchu's system is designed to break inmates through control, not brutality. And for those who can't handle it, the punishment is isolation, where the silence grows even deeper, and time slows to a crawl. A prison doesn't need to be loud to be terrifying. Sometimes the quiet is worse than anything else. Some prisons are lawless because the guards don't care, others are lawless because even the guards are afraid. Kamiti Maximum Security Prison is one of Kenya's most notorious facilities, a place where brutality is just another part of survival. Built during British colonial rule, it was originally meant to hold a few hundred prisoners. Today it holds thousands, all crammed into filthy, decaying cells. Inmates fight for space, food, and any scrap of power they can claim. Corrupt officials turn a blind eye to the chaos, often making deals with the most dangerous prisoners. Disease spreads fast, with little medical care to stop it. Escaping is nearly impossible, but that doesn't stop some from trying. Those who get caught face punishments even worse than the conditions inside. But even in a prison like this, survival is still an option. In some places, the system itself is designed to break people beyond repair. And in New York's Rikers Island, even those who haven't been convicted yet can find themselves trapped in a nightmare. It's not a prison, not technically. Rikers Island is a jail, a place where inmates are supposed to wait for trial or serve short sentences. But for many, it feels like a life sentence. This massive complex, sitting just off the coast of New York City, is infamous for its violence, corruption, and sheer brutality. Overcrowding is only part of the problem. Understaffed and chaotic, Rikers is filled with gang conflicts, violent outbursts, and a dangerous mix of inmates, many of whom haven't even been convicted yet. The weak don't last long here. Guards struggle to maintain control, often resorting to extreme force or simply looking the other way. The jail's reputation is so bad that calls to shut it down have been ongoing for years. But for now, it remains one of the most dangerous places to be locked up in America. And if Rikers is bad, some prisons make it look almost tolerable. In Venezuela's La Sabaneta, there are no rules, no structure, only survival of the fittest. There's no warden running this prison, no real authority. La Sabaneta is a prison in name only. In reality, it's a battleground where inmates form their own rules, and the strongest decide who lives and who dies. Overcrowded and lawless, it's one of the most dangerous prisons in Latin America. Cells meant for a handful of people hold dozens. Food is scarce, medical care is non-existent. Weapons are easy to find, and gang leaders control everything, from who gets to eat to who makes it through the night. Even guards stay out of the way, knowing that stepping in means risking their own lives. Riots, massacres, and sudden bursts of violence are just part of daily life. Some call it a prison. Others call it hell. But even in hell, there are places darker than others. And in Syria's Tadmor military prison, the walls themselves seem to absorb the horrors that happen inside. Few places on earth are as feared as Tadmor military prison. Once known as the most brutal prison in the Middle East, it became infamous for its merciless treatment of inmates. Isolated in the Syrian desert, it wasn't just a place of punishment, it was a place where people disappeared. Prisoners weren't just criminals. Many were political detainees, locked away for opposing the government. Those who entered were often never seen again. The structure itself was a fortress, designed less to hold prisoners and more to bury them alive in endless suffering. The prison's horrors lasted for decades until it was finally destroyed. But its reputation lingers, a reminder of what happens when a prison is built not for justice, but for fear. And yet, as brutal as Tadmor was, some prisons are terrifying in a different way. Not because of what's done to the inmates, but because of the sheer chaos inside. In the Philippines, Quezon City Jail is a human sardine can, where the fight for space is more desperate than anything else. There are no prison cells here, not in the way most people imagine. At Quezon City Jail, thousands of inmates are crammed into spaces so small that many can't even lie down to sleep. The prison was built to hold 800 people. Today, it holds more than 3,000. Prisoners sleep in shifts, stacking themselves in whatever corner they can find. Some dangle hammocks from the ceiling, others collapse in hallways packed together like human cargo. There's barely enough food to go around. Clean water is limited. The air is thick with heat, sweat, and desperation. The guards try to maintain order, but there's only so much they can do when the population is nearly 4 times what the facility was built for. Here, time moves differently. The days stretch on in suffocating discomfort, and the only thing worse than being here is the uncertainty of when, if ever, you'll get out. Inmates wait, packed together in one of the most overcrowded jails in the world, with no real end in sight. And for those who don't have the strength to endure, the walls close in fast. For over a century, Isla Marias was Mexico's version of Alcatraz, an isolated prison island where the worst criminals were sent to disappear. Surrounded by the vast Pacific Ocean, escape was impossible. Inmates lived in brutal conditions, forced into hard labor with little oversight. Punishment wasn't just physical, it was psychological. The isolation, the endless routine, the knowledge that the mainland was so close yet unreachable broke many prisoners long before their sentences ended. With time, Isla Marias changed. It went from a hellish penal colony to a reformatory-style prison, but the suffering never fully disappeared. By the time it shut down, its history was already stained with decades of hardship. Some places reform, others remain trapped in their own brutality. In the UK, HMP Belmarsh is not an island, but it might as well be. Its walls separate some of the most dangerous criminals from the rest of the world, locking them in a place built for control. Belmarsh isn't just another prison, it's Britain's most secure facility, housing terrorists, murderers, and high-risk offenders under relentless surveillance. It's been compared to America's ADX Florence, but instead of total isolation, inmates here are placed under strict control, with little chance of slipping through the cracks. Violence lurks beneath the surface. Inside these walls, notorious criminals mix with remand prisoners awaiting trial, creating an unpredictable and dangerous environment. The prison's reputation is built on its tight security, but it doesn't stop internal conflicts from breaking out. Even those who have spent years inside describe it as a place where trust is a weakness, and every interaction could turn deadly. There's no clear divide between guards and inmates in La Modelo. Control belongs to whoever has the most power, and in this overcrowded, gang-dominated prison, that means the strongest criminals call the shots. Rival factions divide the prison into territories, each section ruled like its own separate kingdom. Weapons, drugs, and violence are a constant presence. Guards keep their distance, knowing that interfering with the wrong group could be a death sentence. Inmates decide who eats, who gets protection, and who doesn't make it through the night. It's less of a prison, and more of a lawless city within walls. While La Modelo's chaos is out in the open, some prisons are far more secretive. In China's Xinjiang prison, silence is the real punishment, and even the most powerful prisoners are reduced to nothing. Not all prisons are filled with gangsters and murderers. Some hold politicians, officials, and former power brokers who fell out of favor. Xinjiang prison is China's most secretive facility, a place where the country's own elite disappear behind locked doors. Once inside, even the most influential figures are stripped of their status. Prisoners live in near total isolation, watched at all times. Their cells are small, meals are controlled, and outside contact is nearly non-existent. There's no loud violence, no visible brutality, just the slow, crushing reality of being erased. Inmates might have once ruled cities or corporations, but inside Xinjiang they are just numbers. And yet even here there is still structure. In Algeria's Serkaji prison even that is lost. There, history, violence, and control all blend into a single, unrelenting nightmare. Serkaji prison was never meant to be a place of rehabilitation. It was a place of fear. Built during French colonial rule, it quickly became one of Algeria's most infamous facilities, known for housing political prisoners and those accused of terrorism. Its dark reputation was sealed by its brutal past: mass executions, uprisings, and constant violence. The prison is a relic of a time when power was maintained through control and intimidation. Those sent here weren't just criminals. Many were locked away for what they believed, making it one of the most politically charged prisons in North Africa. Even today its legacy lingers, a reminder of a system that operated more on fear than justice. Some prisons break inmates with violence, others with isolation, but in Serkaji, the walls themselves seem to carry the weight of its history, leaving a mark on everyone who ever passed through its gates. That's about it. Which prison did you find the toughest? Write in the comments. For more useful information, watch other videos.